Marcus Thompson had always been proud of his meticulously maintained backyard. At 45, he was a successful landscape architect who took particular pride in his in-ground swimming pool, a centerpiece he designed and installed himself. The pool was his sanctuary, a perfect blend of form and function that reflected his professional expertise. Little did he know that this cherished feature would soon become the epicenter of a neighborhood conflict that would escalate beyond his wildest imagination. The story of Marcus's dream backyard began 5 years earlier when he purchased the corner lot in Oak Ridge Estates, a meticulously planned suburban development known for its strict homeowners association guidelines and manicured landscapes. After spending 2 decades working for a prestigious landscape design firm in the city, Marcus had finally saved enough to create his personal masterpiece. The property was a canvas waiting to be transformed, and he approached its redesign with the same precision he brought to his professional projects. His pool was more than just a water feature. It was a testament to his craft, a custom-designed free-form oasis that seemed to flow seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. Native plants carefully selected and positioned around the pool's perimeter created a natural barrier and added depth to the design. Smooth river rocks lined the edges, breaking up the traditional concrete and adding a touch of organic beauty. LED lighting embedded beneath the water's surface could change colors, turning the pool into a mesmerizing light show during evening gatherings. Marcus had always been a private person, but not antisocial. Divorced for 8 years and with an adult daughter living in another state, he found solace in his work and his carefully curated home environment. His neighbors knew him as the quiet professional who kept to himself but was always willing to offer landscaping advice if asked. The neighborhood respected his expertise, often seeking his informal consultations about their own yard improvements. The pool represented more than just a recreational space. It was Marcus' retirement project, a physical manifestation of years of professional knowledge and personal dreams. He had designed it to be simultaneously functional and aesthetically pleasing with a natural filtration system that reduced chemical usage and a shape that maximized both swimming area and visual appeal. Every detail had been meticulously planned, from the gentle slope of the pool's bottom to the strategically placed drainage systems that would prevent any potential water runoff issues. Little did Marcus know that his carefully crafted sanctuary would soon become the focal point of a conflict that would test his patience, challenge his professional reputation, and ultimately expose the darker side of neighborhood dynamics. The pool, which he had intended to be a source of personal joy and relaxation, was about to become the catalyst for a confrontation that would draw attention from the entire community and ultimately local law enforcement. Melissa Rodriguez, the neighborhood's self-appointed watchdog, often referred to as Karen by her frustrated neighbors, first noticed Marcus's pool during a routine evening walk. She immediately began scrutinizing every detail, measuring the pool's proximity to the property line and searching for any potential violations. Her history of filing complaints was well known, and Marcus had successfully avoided her radar until now. Melissa began taking photographs, measuring distances, and preparing her first of many formal complaints to the Homeowners Association. The origins of Melissa's hyper-vigilant nature were deeply rooted in her personal history. At 52, she was a retired court clerk with an almost obsessive appreciation for rules and regulations. Her career in the judicial system had instilled in her a rigid interpretation of guidelines that bordered on fanatical. Every rule was absolute, every regulation sacred, and she saw herself as the last line of defense against what she perceived as neighborhood decay. Melissa had moved to Oak Ridge Estates 15 years earlier, following her divorce from a high school mathematics teacher. The dissolution of her marriage had left her with a sense of lost control, a feeling she now compensated for by micromanaging every aspect of her environment. Her immaculately maintained corner lot was a testament to this need for order, not a blade of grass out of place, not a single shrub extending beyond its prescribed boundaries. The neighborhood had a complex relationship with Melissa. Some residents appreciated her vigilance, viewing her as a guardian of community standards. Others saw her as a perpetual nuisance, a busybody who derived pleasure from creating conflict. She had successfully forced several homeowners to repaint their houses, remove unauthorized garden structures, and trim trees that marginally exceeded height restrictions. Her reputation was such that real estate agents would quietly warn potential buyers about the neighborhood inspector, a nickname that Melissa wore with perverse pride. Marcus's pool represented everything that challenged Melissa's worldview. It was innovative, slightly unconventional, and pushed the boundaries of traditional suburban landscaping. Where others saw artistic design, she saw potential infractions. Her evenings were now consumed with research, comparing Marcus's pool installation to local building codes, zoning regulations, and homeowners association bylaws. She maintained a meticulously organized binder of potential violations, complete with color-coded tabs and detailed notes. Photographs were printed in triplicate, measurements recorded with mathematical precision. Melissa had developed a network of similarly minded individuals, retired professionals, and part-time community watchdogs who shared information about potential code violations. What Melissa didn't realize was that Marcus was no ordinary homeowner. As a professional landscape architect, he was intimately familiar with every regulation, every building code. His pool had been designed with such careful consideration that it would withstand the most rigorous inspection. But Melissa was not one to be deterred by mere facts or professional expertise. Her first complaint to the Homeowners Association was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language. 27 pages long, it included satellite imagery, hand-drawn diagrams, and a comprehensive list of potential violations. She argued that the pool's positioning potentially violated setback requirements, suggested improper drainage might occur, and questioned the environmental impact of the installation. The neighborhood watched and waited, some with amusement, some with dread, and some, like Marcus, with a growing sense of disbelief at the storm that was about to be unleashed. The first direct confrontation occurred on a sunny Saturday morning. Melissa marched up to Marcus' property, clipboard in hand, demanding to discuss what she claimed were serious infractions related to his pool's placement and landscaping. Marcus, known for his calm demeanor, attempted to reason with her, explaining the pool's professional installation and compliance with all local regulations. However, Melissa was relentless, her voice rising with each passing minute, drawing curious stares from neighboring homeowners. That morning had started like any other for Marcus. He was preparing for a routine weekend of pool maintenance, carefully testing the water chemistry and adjusting the landscape around the pool's perimeter. The early summer sun cast long shadows across his meticulously maintained backyard, highlighting the intricate design work he had spent months perfecting. He was wearing khaki cargo shorts and a faded polo shirt, his typical weekend attire, when Melissa's sharp voice cut through the morning tranquility. The confrontation began with Melissa's dramatic entrance. She approached Marcus' property line with the determination of a seasoned prosecutor, her sensible beige walking shoes crunching on the carefully laid decorative gravel that marked the boundary between their properties. A thick binder was clutched to her chest, its edges reinforced with clear plastic and multiple color-coded sticky notes protruding from its pages. "Mr. Thompson," she called out, her voice carrying the authoritative tone of someone accustomed to being heard. "I need to discuss multiple code violations related to your recent pool installation." Marcus turned, wiping his hands on a nearby towel, his initial response measured and professional. "Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez. Is there something I can help you with?" What followed was a meticulously documented verbal assault. Melissa began listing her concerns with rapid-fire precision. She argued that the pool's positioning violated multiple zoning regulations, challenged the drainage system's compliance, and questioned the environmental impact of the installation. Her arguments were a complex web of technical language and bureaucratic jargon delivered with the confidence of someone who had spent decades navigating governmental regulations. Marcus listened patiently, his professional background allowing him to understand and counter each of her points. He pulled out his original design plans, zoning permits, and inspection certificates, documentation he always kept readily available due to the nature of his work. Each of Melissa's claims was systematically dismantled by his professional expertise, but Melissa was not one to be easily deterred. As Marcus calmly presented his evidence, she became increasingly agitated. Her voice grew louder, her gestures more animated. Neighbors began to peek out of their windows, some grabbing their phones to record the unfolding drama. An elderly couple from across the street brought out lawn chairs, treating the confrontation like a neighborhood entertainment event. "This is about more than just your pool," Melissa declared, her face flushing with a mixture of anger and frustration. "This is about maintaining the standards of our community." Marcus remained calm, but a subtle tension began to show in the set of his shoulders. He recognized the type, a bureaucratic zealot who found purpose in creating conflict. Years of professional experience had taught him how to handle difficult personalities, but this was testing the limits of his patience. The confrontation continued for nearly an hour, with Marcus maintaining his composure, while Melissa became increasingly agitated. Passers-by stopped to watch, smartphones capturing snippets of the argument. What had begun as a simple discussion about pool regulations was quickly becoming a neighborhood spectacle. Little did either of them know that this was just the beginning of a conflict that would soon involve local authorities and transform their quiet suburban neighborhood into a battleground of bureaucratic warfare. Undeterred by Marcus' explanations, Melissa began a systematic campaign of harassment. She filed multiple complaints with the Homeowners Association, local zoning board, and even contacted the city building inspector. Each complaint was more elaborate than the last, ranging from alleged zoning violations to claims about water runoff and property line encroachment. Marcus found himself spending hours gathering documentation, consulting his original blueprints, and gathering support from his neighbors. The campaign of complaints quickly became a full-time obsession for Melissa. Her retired court clerk background proved to be a formidable weapon in bureaucratic warfare. She began by drafting a comprehensive 47-page document detailing what she claimed were multiple violations related to Marcus's pool installation. The document was a masterpiece of technical language and selective interpretation, filled with diagrams, measurements, and citations of obscure local building codes. Her first target was the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, HOA. The complaint package arrived at the HOA office in a large manila envelope, accompanied by multiple color-coded folders and a cover letter typed with meticulous precision. She highlighted potential issues with pool placement, drainage concerns, and alleged discrepancies in the original building permits. Each allegation was supported by photographs taken from multiple angles, some clearly shot from her property line, others seemingly taken from precarious positions that bordered on surveillance. Marcus's professional network became his greatest asset in this unexpected battle. As a respected landscape architect, he had cultivated relationships with local building inspectors, zoning officials, and fellow professionals over his two-decade career. When the first official inquiry arrived, he was prepared. His original pool design included extensive environmental impact studies, precise drainage calculations, and full compliance with all local and state regulations. The local building inspector, a man named Robert Jenkins, whom Marcus had worked with on previous projects, was particularly thorough. He arrived at the property with a copy of Melissa's complaint, clipboard in hand, and a look of weary professionalism. Jenkins had dealt with Melissa's complaints before and approached the investigation with a mixture of patience and professional skepticism. What Melissa didn't anticipate was the level of documentation Marcus maintained. As a landscape architect, he treated every project, including his personal property, with the same professional rigor he applied to his client work. Detailed blueprints, soil analysis reports, drainage studies, and permit documentation were meticulously organized in a custom-built filing system in his home office. The neighborhood began to take sides. Some residents, tired of Melissa's previous campaigns, quietly supported Marcus. Others watched the unfolding drama with a mixture of fascination and concern. Neighborhood group chats and email chains buzzed with discussions about the pool dispute, with Marcus becoming something of an unexpected hero to those who had previously suffered under Melissa's regulatory crusades. Melissa's complaints expanded beyond the HOA. She contacted the county zoning board, the local environmental protection agency, and even attempted to involve state-level regulatory bodies. Each complaint was crafted with the precision of a legal brief, filled with technical language and implied threats of further action. For Marcus, the situation was becoming increasingly stressful. Despite his professional calm, the constant stream of official inquiries and Melissa's relentless pursuit was taking its toll. He found himself spending evenings preparing documentation, consulting with lawyer friends, and strategizing how to counter each new allegation. The pool, the sanctuary, his pride and joy, was transforming into a source of constant anxiety. What had begun as a personal project of beauty and relaxation was now in the center of a bureaucratic nightmare that threatened to consume his peace of mind completely. The situation reached a critical point when Melissa began photographing Marcus's backyard multiple times a day, creating what felt like a constant invasion of privacy. She would stand at the edge of his property using a long-lens camera to capture every detail. Marcus's peaceful enjoyment of his home was shattered, and the stress began to take its toll. Sleepless nights and constant anxiety transformed the once calm landscape architect into a man pushed to his limits. Her surveillance was methodical and relentless. Melissa had invested in professional-grade photography equipment, a high-end digital camera with a telephoto lens that allowed her to capture images from considerable distances. She created a makeshift observation post in her backyard, complete with a folding chair, a small table for her equipment, and a detailed logbook where she meticulously recorded her observations. At first, Marcus tried to ignore her. He would continue his daily routines, maintaining the pool, working on landscape designs from his home office, enjoying occasional moments of relaxation in his backyard. But Melissa's constant presence was like a psychological warfare that gradually eroded his mental peace. She would photograph everything: pool maintenance, weekend gatherings with his occasional visitors, even his morning coffee routine on the patio. The neighborhood began to notice the escalating tension. Neighbors would whisper and exchange knowing glances when Melissa was seen with her camera, positioned strategically near the property line. Some were amused, others concerned, but most felt a growing sense of unease about the situation. Marcus, once known for his friendly but reserved demeanor, began to show signs of significant stress. His daughter, Elena, who lived in Seattle, became increasingly worried during their weekly phone calls. She could hear the strain in her father's voice, the way he would pause mid-sentence, distracted by the ongoing conflict. Marcus had always been a pillar of calm and professionalism, but the constant harassment was wearing him down. The psychological impact was profound. Marcus, who had always found solace in his carefully designed landscape, now felt like a prisoner in his own home. Every movement seemed calculated, every action potentially subject to Melissa's scrutiny. He began to modify his behavior, closing curtains during the day, avoiding spending time in his beloved backyard, feeling constantly watched. His professional life started to suffer as well. As a landscape architect, his reputation for calm and precision was his greatest asset. But the stress of the ongoing conflict began to affect his work. He missed deadlines, became less responsive to clients, and found it increasingly difficult to concentrate on design projects. The breaking point came on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was working on a complex landscape design for a new commercial project when he heard the familiar click of a camera shutter outside. Something inside him snapped. Years of professional restraint, of carefully maintained composure, suddenly gave way to a surge of frustration and anger. He stormed outside, his carefully pressed work shirt now wrinkled, his normally meticulously styled hair disheveled. "Enough," he shouted, his voice carrying a mix of anger and desperation that surprised even himself. "You cannot continue to invade my privacy like this." Melissa, for the first time, looked momentarily taken aback. Her camera hung suspended mid-shot, her expression a mixture of surprise and her typical combative determination. But Marcus was far from finished. Years of pent-up frustration poured out. A comprehensive account of her harassment, the impact on his personal and professional life, the complete violation of his privacy. The confrontation drew the attention of nearby neighbors, who watched with a mixture of shock and anticipation. Marcus Thompson, the quiet professional landscape architect, was finally breaking his silence. Little did he know this moment would be the catalyst that would transform the entire conflict, setting in motion a series of events that would involve local authorities and fundamentally change the dynamics of their quiet suburban neighborhood. With mounting evidence of harassment, Marcus finally decided to take legal action. He filed a formal restraining order presenting detailed documentation of Melissa's repeated intrusive behavior. The local police became involved, interviewing neighbors and reviewing the extensive documentation. Body camera footage would later reveal the intensity of Melissa's confrontations, showing her aggressive stance and repeated attempts to provoke a reaction. Marcus's decision to pursue legal action came after careful consultation with his close friend David Reynolds, a retired attorney who lived 2 blocks away. David had witnessed portions of the ongoing conflict and helped Marcus compile a comprehensive dossier documenting Melissa's behavior. The documentation was extensive, a meticulously organized collection of photographs, written records, and witness statements that painted a clear picture of sustained harassment. The first step was meeting with the local law enforcement. Detective Sarah Martinez, a 15-year veteran of the Suburban Police Department, was assigned to the case. She had dealt with neighborhood disputes before, but something about this case stood out. Marcus arrived at the police station with a 3-ring binder that could have passed for a small novel, each page carefully annotated and organized chronologically. "I've never seen such comprehensive documentation," Detective Martinez remarked, flipping through the pages. Photographs showed Melissa positioned at various points near Marcus' property line, her long-lens camera clearly visible. Dated logs detailed the frequency of her surveillance, sometimes up to 6 or 7 times a day. Text messages from concerned neighbors corroborated Marcus' account of ongoing harassment. The legal process was methodical. Each piece of evidence was carefully reviewed, cross-referenced, and verified. Neighbors were interviewed, their statements providing additional context to the escalating conflict. Tom and Linda Henderson, who lived directly across the street, provided particularly compelling testimony about Melissa's increasingly erratic behavior. "It's like she's made this pool her entire purpose," Linda told the detective. "She'll sit out for hours, just watching, taking pictures. It's not normal." The police investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. This wasn't Melissa's first confrontation with neighbors. A review of past complaints showed a history of similar incidents, though none had escalated to this level of intensity. Her file contained multiple previous complaints that had been dismissed or resolved through mediation. Marcus's professional background worked to his advantage. As a landscape architect, he understood the importance of precision and documentation. Every interaction, every photograph, every complaint was carefully logged. His professional training had inadvertently prepared him for this moment of legal defense. The restraining order process was complex. Marcus had to prove that Melissa's actions constituted more than a mere nuisance. They needed to demonstrate a genuine threat to his safety and quality of life. His documentation was crucial. Photographs showed Melissa positioned in ways that could only be described as predatory. Her camera lens pointed directly at his home for extended periods. Detective Martinez was particularly struck by a series of photographs showing Melissa's observation points. She had created what appeared to be a semi-permanent surveillance station at the edge of her property, complete with a folding chair, a small table for her camera equipment, and what looked like a logbook. This goes beyond the typical neighbor dispute, Martinez noted in her official report. This appears to be a systematic campaign of harassment. The legal team preparing the restraining order was thorough. They requested not just a standard temporary restraining order, but a more comprehensive protective order that would limit Melissa's ability to continue her surveillance. The documentation suggested that this was more than a simple misunderstanding. It was a calculated effort to intrude on Marcus's privacy and peace of mind. As the legal machinery began to turn, Marcus felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had never wanted to take legal action, preferring to resolve conflicts professionally and amicably. But Melissa had left him no choice. His sanctuary, his carefully designed home and pool, had been transformed into a battleground, and he was determined to reclaim his peace.